Hello, everyone. It's Grace Kraaijvanger. Welcome back to the Art of What's Next podcast. My guest today is originally from Sierra Leone, West Africa. She's a former Division I athlete. She's a mother of two. She's an adjunct professor, a personal branding expert, and she's the author of a book called Scream Your Dream. I met Cheldin Barlatt Rumer at Alt Summit, which is a really cool conference that I went to a couple of months ago. I was so mesmerized by her passion and the strategies that she uses to help people own their voices and put their work out into the world. I knew Cheldin was my person, and I literally ran up to her and asked her to be on this podcast, as I knew you'd be as inspired as I was by her energy, her commitment, and her brilliance. Cheldin is also the CEO and executive producer of This Is It Network, which is a global digital streaming platform that's dedicated to bringing brilliant voices forward in the world. She works like a magician. She helps people clarify their personal brand, share their stories, and turn their ideas into action. And Cheldin and I have some collaboration ideas brewing as well. So there's lots more to come between us. But for today, I'm so excited to welcome Cheldin to the show. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be joined by the amazing Cheldin Barlatt Rumer. I was so glad to meet you, Cheldin. We got to meet at the coolest conference at Alt Summit.
So good. So good.
So good.
So much fun. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, and we just hit it off like right out of the gate. I've already introduced you, but just to reiterate, Cheldin is the CEO and executive producer of This Is It Network. And she just wrote an amazing book called Scream Your Dream, 66 Lessons to Build Your Personal Brand.
Sure.
And you are the queen of, this idea of Scream Your Dream.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I knew when I met you that you were a personal brand genius. And I'm so glad you're putting this work out.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very much a labor and love, and for a lot of people, because I'm so extroverted, I'm sure people can feel it, whether it be through the screen or through their, ear pods at this point. But because I'm so extroverted, a lot of people think that these lessons are only for those who in fact are extroverted, right? Those people that are making friends in the produce section, but it's not. It's equally for the introverts that are out there as well. Personal branding is something we all need, I think.
I agree in all kinds of ways. But that's actually my first question is, will you just take us into what inspired you to write Scream Your Dream? Like where did this start? And you can take us back as far as you want.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I'll take you back to the start of This Is It Network. And I think that is really what catapulted the Scream Your Dream and the necessity for it. So I originally had a PR marketing and graphic design agency. So we were helping a lot of small businesses, primarily women, get themselves on Good Day Philadelphia. We're part of the East Coast region, so we're part of that tri-state kind of area. And so we were getting them on Good Day Philadelphia and local media and getting small business owners, again, primarily women to tell their story. And so they would get on the couch or, on the stage, they would be talking to media and for whatever reason would lose their voice. They would stutter over why somebody should buy their chocolate chip cookie, why somebody should buy their necklace. They could not part their lips to share what is their differentiating factor. And right? And I, as just a extroverted person, I just thought it was tragic because they had remortgaged their house for this. They'd quit their jobs for this, right? But when given the opportunity, they could not find the words. And for somebody who often has too many words, I was like, we have to do something. I had studied media and communications. I always loved talk shows and television and telling stories. And so I just turned the camera on my clients and we just started practicing media training, let's say, in my office. I would interview them within these fake interviews and I lit up. I found my voice in place. They lit up. They found their voice in place. And literally I said out loud, this is it. This is all I want to do for the rest of my life. I only want to help people share their stories and I want to be able to give them a place to do it. Well, that happened. I was interviewing a series of different folks, 1 to 5 people per day. It was super, super fun. And then even during the pandemic, I would continued via Zoom and we started connecting with an international audience, which was wonderful. But at the end of each interview, the question was, how do I use my voice?
Right.
I love what you're doing. I felt so comfortable. I love the fact that my grandmother's recipe is now out there. I loved how it felt to finally have my story told. How do I continue this? And there was a number of different lessons that I had always taught my clients, that I had always taught my students. I'm also an adjunct professor at both Temple and Drexel universities in Philadelphia, and I teach personal branding. And it was a side note to what it is that I was doing. But what happened was it was a beautiful marriage between creating a platform where people can share their story and then teaching them how to, in fact, share their
Right.
story. Right. And so I knew that, we needed to give them more tools. They just couldn't observe, and not everybody's going to be sitting with me at least every day. And so how can I create a toolkit? How can I give them lessons, a little less fluff, a little less remember when I was in 8th grade, and a little more let's get to work. So it's broken down into 3 sections. It's, get started, get organized, get active. So that's usually where people are stumbling. How do I get started? I'm started now. What do I do? Right. I'm
Right.
started. I'm organized. Now, how do I keep it moving? And so it's very, very simplistic, bullet pointed. You can feel the PowerPoint presentations in it, but it's written as a lesson book that people can refer to, thumbnail, and put those post-it notes in there in order to find their voice and scream their dream.
I love that. And I've noticed there's so many different ways, and I'm guilty of this too. I
Yeah.
certainly, fall into this as well, where we know we're passionate about what we do. We know that, like, I know I was put on this earth to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, if I'm at the wrong cocktail party talking to people that make me feel a little uncomfortable, and somebody asks what I do, I'm, here I am, I teach this stuff too. And I can get quiet as well, right? Like, it's
100%.
we need that coaching. So what challenges did you see? You were coaching your clients, and, like, and what were some of the specifics around, of what things that they wanted to change and things that they wanted to do differently, and what outcomes did you see when you started to help them?
For sure, for sure. I feel like the majority of people don't know the important elements of their story, right? And so when they are asked the question, what do you do? It's like, what don't I do? Right? It's very overwhelming. They haven't
Yeah.
scripted, they haven't taken the time to pull it out, right? Think of it as if everybody's life was a documentary, right? I'm obsessed with documentaries. I watch Tina Turner and Dolly Parton and all, it's not all of their lives. It's not every single frame of their life.
Right.
It's the highlight reel of their life. It is the greatest hits of their life. And we need to give people permission to be able to identify those highlights, identify those greatest hits, and then hold them, practice them, acknowledge them, and allow for them to be how people remember them. The way that I define personal branding is what people say and think about you in your absence, right? What do
Mm.
they remember when you've left the room or the Zoom? And if we arm ourselves with those highlight reels and those greatest hits, we give people breadcrumbs and ways to find us again. And so oftentimes we don't have those. We're like, I kind of do a lot of stuff. I'm not really sure. I don't really know. I'm all over the place. Like, we talk about ourselves in this very, self-deprecating way, as opposed
Yes.
to an organized group of highlights or an organized group of greatest hits. And so that's one thing I encourage them to do. I ask them to create what I call their unique equation, which is who they are, what they want, and why they deserve it. If they know those 3 things, who are you, what do you want, and why do you deserve it in this moment, then you can begin and continue a conversation. Yeah.
That is so beautiful, because a lot of our listeners,
Yeah.
our show's called The Art of What's Next because it's all around next chapters. And, for there are periods in all of our lives when we can see the vision for our next chapter and we're working toward it. And then there's periods for all of us where we truly, we feel like we're in the muck of uncertainty, right? Like, where
Right.
you know that you're changing, you know that you're going towards something, you want to create something new or some shift in your life, but you may not know what, or you may not be clear yet. And that's when it's hardest to answer that question of, like, so what do you do? Right?
That's when it's hardest. That's when it's hardest. And I think that at that point, I always encourage people to reintroduce themselves to themselves, right?
Mm.
Because people treat you as they knew you, not as you are, because they're not part of it, right? They weren't part of your promotion. They weren't part of your revelation that you had at 2 o'clock in the morning to change your career. They weren't part of it. The last time they knew you, you were in real estate. Now you own a yoga studio, right? Somebody needed to send an email. Like you needed to let someone know so they could better prepare to talk about you in your absence, right? They didn't know that you were now on this journey. And instead of feeling, because oftentimes people feel, whether it's shame or people will think that I'm have a lack of direction or, whatever they've told themselves that others are going to tell them. It's how we deliver the message of our new chapter, right? It's how we present the new chapter. If we present the new chapter as, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm kind of all over, then they're going to receive it in that way. If we said, I'm really done with real estate. I'm excited about this new being a yoga instructor and really learning this practice, then people are like, really, tell me more. As opposed to, I'm gonna do yoga. I'm not really sure if it's gonna work. I'm not really right, which is often what we lean into when we are uncertain how people are going to react to the decision or the change that we've made. So it's very hard to sell something in which you do not believe. And if you do not believe your own personal brand, it's hard to convince others that you believe in yourself, and therefore they won't believe in you either. So I just reintroducing yourself to yourself is really part of the personal branding practice.
I think, for those that end up watching this, they'll see me nodding, nodding, nodding. For those that are listening, just know I'm nodding because I mean, ultimately, I think that that's one of the biggest challenges of creating, whether we're creating something new or building on a vision that we've had for a long time. I think one of the biggest challenges is that we start to believe the voice in our head and it starts to come out our mouth.
Oh yeah, 100%. And oftentimes it's not anyone else, right? We're like, I don't want, anybody else to think that I'm going to be a mess. You think you're a mess. And I can tell you think you're a mess, right? And it's very much that whole kind of scenario when, somebody smells something bad and they're like, this smells bad, smell it, right? And you're like, no, I don't want to smell it. Like you just told me it smelled bad. So if you already told me it smelled, why would I buy it? Like my
Right.
students will send me their websites. It's like, it's really bad, but can you look at it? No, I can't. Like, it's really bad. You don't even like it. You don't even like your work. Like,
Right.
it's very much a situation. Now, that's not to say we can't work together to build a better product, that we can't work together to nurture and pull out the best of you, but you need to believe that you are deserving. And that also starts with not faking it, right? This idea, I'm old enough to remember individuals that still say, fake it till you make it, right? That used to be the credo, like where you have to fake it till you make it to get into the room. And if you get anything from this podcast or the conversation today, is that just come as you are. Fraudulence is not the answer. You pretending to be a director when you have directed no one, pretending to be a manager when you manage nothing, right? Only makes you a liar, as opposed to being an assistant, being a coordinator, being a forever student. It starts a conversation in a different way. I don't know, but I'm here to learn is a different way to position your brand versus I'll pretend that I know everything and figure it out along the way. Starts a relationship dishonestly. And so I just encourage people to come as they are and attempt to communicate where they are at this moment.
I love that. I also, it's interesting because I think we've had some conversations on the podcast
Yeah.
about how social media has it started out with creating, and it still does create this
Yeah.
ideal where we think we're living up to some ideal. But when I
Yeah.
get really honest with the people that I love following, that I'm
Yeah.
like always liking, always seeing what they're up to, it's the ones that are real. It's,
Yes.
like I'll never forget when Mel Robbins
Oh,
um rolled out of bed in her little jammy bottoms, and she was like, it was hilarious. Like her little
yeah.
booty was like kind of like,
Yeah.
you
Kind of
know,
hanging out.
and
I remember that.
do you remember that? Because
Yeah.
it was like, okay, that's real. She's just
Real.
being her real self. And she laughed about it. She made all these jokes about it. But it was like, I think the fact that it was so unscripted and so
Yeah.
just how she was, and it's how we all roll out of bed, frankly, like it was so, it felt so resonant, and I believed her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's such a reminder and a lesson that, like, just being real, being ourselves, like telling all about our vulnerabilities, or as much as we feel comfortable with, it's so attractive. Don't you think?
Yes.
Like, it's like people are drawn to that.
Yes. And I think that that's it, where you're comfortable. right? Like
Yes.
we are inviting people into our home, right? As if you were, so if you said, hey, I'm having a cocktail party, it's from 4 to 8 o'clock. It starts at 4, stay as long as you want. We create the boundaries, right?
Yes.
So if you're a stay as long as you want kind of cocktail party thrower, or you're like, it's from 4 to 8, I'm putting the kids to bed at 8 o'clock, you create the boundaries on how you invite people into your life. Social media is no different. Social media is outside, right? So how would you act outside? Do you share everything with the world outside? Probably not, right? But some of us are louder outside and having a good time and share everything outside. We have to create the discipline that our personal brand demands or requires. And we get to set that tone, right? So we follow people that only let us in once a week. We follow people that go live once a month. And then I also follow people that get ready with me every day, right? That I see every little nook and cranny, overnight oats and everything in between, but they've set those boundaries. They
Yes.
said that they were going to give me 24-hour access. The other people that I follow equally and love as much said that they were only going to give me once a week, one post a day, one newsletter a week, right? In that way, we get to set the discipline. And I think a lot of us miss that in the insurgence of what is social media. We were like, we all have to give everything, or we all have to, share everything about who we are in order to have a
Yes.
strong personal brand. And that's not true. That's not true.
It's interesting that you say that because it's a resistance that has come up. I've heard that so many times where people say like, I don't want to go on social media. I don't want to show my kids. I don't want to like, well, it's your rules. Like you said, like you do what's right for you. I've been loving some of my favorite social media posts that I follow are people that write these like 1 or 2 line poems every day on a Post-it. And you never see their picture. I just see these Post-its and I'm
Never.
like, or not even every day, maybe once a week, twice a month. I don't know. But I love what they write down. And I don't need to see their kids. I don't need to see them eating their oats in the morning. I don't care what kind of coffee they're drinking. I just really like their poems on that Post-it.
Yes.
So
And I think that is completely fine. And I know that there's been tons of conversations, obviously, about imposter syndrome, right? As far as getting your name out there and not wanting to participate in social media. One of the things that I'm really leaning into right now, and I believe wholeheartedly, is that social media is a window and not a mirror, right? It's a
mm,
window to the various worlds that exist. It is not a complete reflection of you. Right. And so we find that people are getting a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't want to do that because she does that. You're just witnessing her content. As if you were watching a show, as if you were going from, CSI Miami to Judge Judy to American Idol. You're switching the channels. You're not
right,
expecting all the channels to be the same. You're not expecting all of them to behave in the same way. And if you don't like it, you turn it off. And so
right.
I want people to feel that kind of flexibility, that kind of, true ownership of the brand and content that they put out, where oftentimes they don't feel that with
Totally.
the way social media is.
So Sheldon, let's back up
Yeah.
for some of the
Oh,
people that might be listening to this going like, I don't even
yeah.
know why I would post on social media. Like let's talk about what personal branding is and what it's for and like
Sure.
the various ways that
Yeah.
that personal brand can be important for all of us, whether we're entrepreneurs and influencers or people that are looking for their next job or whatever it is. Can we just
Of course. Like, let's take it down to basics. Again, my
yeah,
definition of personal branding is what people say and think about you in your absence. So
yes,
I am not looking for you to go viral. I'm not looking for you to become a TikToker. I'm not looking for you to break the internet. I'm not looking for you to do any of those things. I'm simply looking for you to utilize these tools. And that's what social media is. It's a tool. It's not a necessity. It's a tool that you use to be able to connect with people. I just need you to be found. That's it.
mm,
For those that are looking for you, I need you to be accessible and found by those you want to find you. If you are not found, you do not exist. People cannot buy what they cannot find. They cannot
right,
promote who they do not know. I mean, it is that simple. And so, are you in a space where people can find you? And whatever you posted last is the definition of your brand. It's the last thing that you want for people to see. So if you chose not to post for the next 3 months, after I meet somebody who knows you in your absence, they say you have to meet John Smith. I go Google John Smith from San Francisco. The last thing you post defines you in a way. So as
mhm,
long as the last thing you posted could lead to a positive conversation about who you are, or a correct conversation for what it is and who it is that you want, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. You are a destination, right? It's the party. Social media is the invitation to the party, right? And that's all it is. Is it, am I leaving enough information on that invitation so
Right.
somebody wants to come to the party? And that's all we need to think about. It's not about going viral or breaking the internet or how many likes or jumping up and down to get the algorithm on your side. It's about making sure that the information that's out there is accurate and it's up to date and timely, and that is a clear definition of who you are, what you want, and why you deserve it. That is all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about, again, going viral or, breaking the internet. Just being found is
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I think it's interesting too. I think that there's certain things. Tell me what you think about this. I think that there's certain things that we kind of take for granted or think that we don't need to say or that people don't need to know, including, for when we're starting something new, or we're not sure what we want to do next. And, I'll give an example of like someone that used to be a fashion designer and
Yeah.
now wants to paint murals, for
Yeah.
example. And she might be thinking like, how do I go from this world where people knew me as this identity, and I want to get into this other world that I'm not known as that identity. But
Wow.
I have found that just by stating that you're interested, just by
Yeah.
stating that that's where you want to go, right? Like it can. So tell us about some of like the simple things that we could do. Again, that
Sure.
sometimes I think I'm always thinking of like if we're at the very beginning, or if we
Yeah.
feel like we are, even if
Yeah.
we're not really,
Always.
but if
Yeah.
we feel like we're at the beginning of
Yeah.
something that we're exploring and trying to find our way, like what are some of the simple things that we can do to put ourselves out there?
Yeah, I think that it's really, again, goes back to that invitation, right? Or going back to reintroducing yourself to yourself. There's a reason why you went from one profession to another. There's a reason why you've decided to go from one space. So tell that story. It isn't that crazy, right? You wanting to go from real estate to yoga, everybody knows you hated real estate. Anybody who knew you hated that job, right? And
So
people are
true.
happy when you are happy. So a lot of you will be surprised how excited people are about the new transition that you're making when you begin to contort yourself and hide it and justify it. And, I know I'm not going to be making as much as I did when I was selling real estate. And you might think I'm crazy, but, all of that kind of tone sets the tone of, again, how you talk about yourself to yourself, and
Right.
therefore how other people receive you. So think about the story as to why you decided to start this new chapter, right? And you will be pleasantly surprised about how many people, predominantly women, who either want to start a second chapter, who will see you as brave because you are doing so, who will seek aspiration and inspiration within your activity and follow you just to inquire about how in the world were they brave enough to do this? Where do they find the courage? Where did they find the resources? You will be surprised who you can inspire when you dive into the reason why you're making the choices that you are. And be okay with making mistakes, right? I think that you
Mm.
you said as it relates to, figuring out what you're doing, I always use the analogy about getting lost. Like if we got lost, if I was making my way from my home to yours and I got lost, right? Or going literally, I'm going across the country, right? It's a cross country journey. I get in the car, I get lost. Do I go all the way back to Philadelphia and start the journey again? Do I throw everything away and say, okay, I'm lost, let me start over? No, you call for directions from where you are. Where am
Huh.
I supposed to go? Grace, I don't know where I am at. Where am I supposed to go? And so often people want to throw everything away and go all the way home when they just need to call for directions from where they are. I quit my job in real estate. I tried this yoga thing. It's not necessarily working out. What do you think I should do? Right? What do you think the next step is? And that call could be internal. What do I really love? Where did I really go wrong? And then in telling the story, it's much more authentic. So give yourself some grace. Make sure that you're not throwing everything away, and try to call and gain directions from where you are in the moment. Yeah.
I could not love that more. I love it because I think that what happens when we are trying to move forward into something, we forget the accumulation of everything that we bring with us. We do exactly what you said. We try to go back to Philadelphia and start over and say like, well, now I'm beginning anew, but we're bringing all that wisdom and all the even the mistakes and the grief and all the things that went wrong and the things that went right that we learned from,
For
we bring it
sure.
with us.
And the relationships, the amount of people that you've met, that you sold a house to, that you will now be stretching downward dog with, right? Like that's the truth. And I think we try to throw it all away, maybe because we feel bad about the decision or we feel, torn with the new chapter that we're looking to start. But if we give ourselves permission, right? Because going back to the documentary, no one wants to watch the documentary where you were rich, I was rich, my kids were rich, we were all rich. That's not a story anyone wants to tell. That is not a best-selling book. That is not a blockbuster film. No one wants to watch that. The story we want to watch is like, really? You left real estate? Did you love it? Oh, I started yoga. Oh, it completely stunk. Now I'm doing this, right? People want to be in that space if we're choosing to be honest with it. And if we pay attention truly to the personal brands that are prominent, like them or hate them, the Kardashians, other prominent people, they ride through the storm. They ride through the good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Mm-hmm.
They ride through the storm and continue to show up and tell their story. Who stays with them, stays with them. Who falls off, falls off. But the key lesson, regardless, again, you love them or you hate them, the lesson is the ability to continue to show up and acknowledge and move forward. And so if we can take anything from what pop culture has shown us, is that the big prominent, and that's huge brands like Michael Jordan, right? Who is not all good all the time, right? But the ability to continue to show up all of the time. Tiger Woods, not good all the time, continuing to show up all of the time, right? And to be able to do that and be really authentic. Simone Biles, she needs a break. I'm going to be honest about needing a break. I no longer need a break. I got married. Now I'm back at the Olympics, showing up continuously, defining and being honest and authentic. These are the personal brands we gravitate to, we rely on, and we can do that in our own lives as well.
So it's beautiful, and it's also very actionable that I think we need to be reminded through work like yours that, when we make mistakes, when we feel like we have failed, when things didn't go the way that we wanted to, when that yoga studio that we started doesn't have as many students as we thought it would, sometimes it can feel so isolating, like you're the only one and nobody wants to hear about it. But the truth is, you're right. I mean, number one, that's a very, like, the how we get through our failures, how we change, how we evolve, how we learn from it. It's fascinating stuff.
It's fascinating. And then that's what really defines you as a personal brand. It's the ability to sustain that. It's the ability to keep going. I would love to say it's the smartest person. It's the person that stuck around the longest. It's the person that was able to sustain the storm and drive through it that gets to the other side. And so if you have more stories to tell, the most honest and authentic to tell, there'll be more people listening. So often people ask me, because again, I'm a lover of all quotes, and I kind of lit up when you said that. I love a good quote. I love any way to find inspiration. My mother has always been, a quote sharer, ever since I was very, very young. Still to this day, at 79 years old, she sends a quote to each of us every morning, to get us to start the day. And so I've chosen to do it that way. People are like, you're positive all the time. You're always so positive. Positivity is my practice. It is the way in which I can be positive because I am not positive all of the time, right? It is something I retreat to when the days are hard, when the mornings are hard, when I can't find the words. I find quotes and use the words of others, right? I am able to do that. And personal branding is very much like that. It's not something that you're going to be boastful one day, like we talked about earlier, and then sustain that forever. It's boastful one day, reconnect with yourself, practice it, and then be able to say it again, right? Talk to yourself in the car, have a conversation with yourself in the shower, make sure while you're cooking, remind yourself of yourself, and it will be easier to have conversations with others once you've had a conversation with yourself.
I so agree. And I'm glad the word boastful kind of struck
Yeah.
a chord with me, because I find that sometimes when I'm encouraging someone to share their work and put themselves out there more, they're so afraid of bragging, of being too
Yeah.
much. Like, how can we encourage
Yeah.
our listeners
Yeah.
to move beyond that?
Sure. I call it bragging boldly. I think that we have this negative connotation because we associate bragging with Lies, right? Somebody who's overzealous, somebody who's
Mhm.
pretending to be somewhere else. But again, we're not faking it till we make it. So our version of bragging is simply just sharing, right? If people don't know you, again, they cannot purchase from you. If they don't know you, they cannot find you. And so in the art of personal branding, and what I encourage people to do, especially when we're starting out and we're trying to figure it out and you don't want to be too overwhelmed, I encourage people to have one more person learn about them today than yesterday. That's the only goal for today. Every day. I just want one person who didn't know me yesterday to know me today. And that begins the conversation, because that's one more person that can have a conversation about you in your absence. They now possess who you are, what you want, and why you deserve it. So when they're at a cocktail party and you're not there, and they say, I need a keynote speaker, or I need a membership group, I really want to be part of a community, or, oh, I need to learn about personal branding. Do you know anyone? Any of the major things that have happened to me in my career thus far has happened based on conversations that I was not a part of. You should call Cheldin. You should connect with her. How we met, even, right? Was, oh, I have a great person to connect you with. That's how this world works. And we were kind of fooled into, or made to be scared of, it's who you know, not what you know, right? And that seems scary. Like, I don't know anybody, but you just need to know one more person today than yesterday. That's it, in order to get closer to what it is that you want. So, for those of you that are scared of bragging too much, I don't want you to brag. I simply want you to share. And the majority of people that are listening already have doctorates, already have degrees, already have 20 years of experience, already have so many things to brag and share about. We just need to remind ourselves of ourselves, and we'll be shocked, right? Because oftentimes we don't reflect. Right? There's certain things that will come across my email or memories on social media and be like, oh, I did that. I forgot I did that, right? And so for us to remember that is super important, because that will truly dictate how we walk into a room, right? Knowing ourselves so well that no one can stump us, because we know ourselves in such great detail. So just simply share, no need to brag.
Mm, I love it, Sheldon. I love it. I love it. And it just unlocks some of those last little bits of permission that we need to give ourselves to
Yeah.
share our story, to share who we really are. And I think so often the reason that we feel stuck or unsure, or like we're kind of like, I used to feel a lot before I started the Hivery, when I was doing more corporate marketing work. But between my professional dance career and starting the Hivery, I did a lot of corporate marketing work. And I always felt like I was wearing the wrong costume, because I just felt like I wasn't in, and whether that was self-inflicted or not, likely not, only
Right,
with
right,
a lot
right.
of, likely not. But it was this feeling of that I couldn't be my whole self.
Right,
And
right.
so I think part of it is really encouraging ourselves with the self-talk that's helpful, to
Yeah,
just be our
sure.
real selves, share our real selves.
Yes, just share real selves, and do it in pieces. If you
Yes.
are an introverted person, I'm not asking you to stand on the corner of Main and Main in your city and start screaming about yourself. If you are a private person, I'm not asking you to go live on Instagram. I'm asking you to be found. Are there enough clues, breadcrumbs out there for somebody to have a conversation about you in your absence? Do the people around you know who you are, what you want, and why you deserve it? Sometimes the closest people to us have no idea on any life changes or new chapters. And so how can they endorse us? How can they be our reference and referral? How can they mention our name in conversations? And so just making sure that that happens in its infancy, in the smallest form, is a way that you can begin, start, get organized, and get active.
I just love it. I just love it. Sheldon, what's the most rewarding part of your work? Because you're like me, like I know you're so passionate about what you do.
Yeah,
And, I'll just
yeah.
tell you a quick story before I go into the actual question. But I actually was at a coffee meeting today, and I was talking in the coffee meeting about someone that I had helped in our incubator program, and just how proud I was of her. And she had taken this step in opening this new studio that she'd been working on. And I was just so proud of her that she'd taken the step. And right after I tell the story, and I'm like beaming with pride, like, oh, I'm like, mama, just, and right after I tell the story, she walks by, this woman that I had just been talking about. And I was
Really?
like, And just the way that my heart felt of being able to say to this person, like, that's the woman I was telling you about. That's the one. That's the woman that made such a big impact, and she's working for it. And I'm like, and I looked at the person I was having coffee with, and I'm like, now do you see why I do what I do? Like, it's just so rewarding when you see that person, you're like, oh, I helped her. And so I want to hear from you. You're helping so many people put their voices out there. And what's the most rewarding part? What's the part that just lights
It's
you up?
it's the click, right? I call it the click, that moment that it clicks, right? They're like, oh, it's grandma's recipe. Like when I say that, it's, a lot of people talk to me and they'll say, I sell chocolate chip cookies. And so somebody else sells chocolate chip cookies. Like, why should anybody care about my chocolate chip cookies? And it's finding that click. What is that click? It's your grandmother's recipe. It's that they're all vegan. It's that they're made with a recipe from your auntie or your sisters that started a bakery in your basement. Whatever the story is solely belongs to you. And when we begin to dissect that, what I call your unique equation, which is who you are, what you want, and why you deserve it. When you see, okay, this is who I am. This is what I want in the moment. Oh my gosh, yes, this is why I deserve it. When you see that, it's like, I would hire me, right? That's what you look at it and you finally come to terms with why you've decided to do what you do, why you are in the space that you are in. And that little click, that little moment that they see themselves, oh, every single time. I was working with somebody just recently and it was, she's a retired teacher, but she wants to get back in the classroom and be able to help and consult municipalities and school districts and how to really help these kids with this mental illness and really have them balance between social, all the things. And she's like, I want to do all these things. I was like, do you really want to do all these things? Or do you just want to do 3 things? Or do you want to do 6 things? Right. And how do we organize that? How do we get it organized? I call it the aisles of your Target, right? Target is a huge store. It sells everything from bananas to, lawnmowers. But when we go in there, we buy too much. But when we go in there, we never get lost because everything is organized in an aisle, right? And oftentimes as our personal brands, we are all over the place, right? We are a dress for less and not a Target, right? Everything is all over the place. It's all rummaging through. Some people like that shopping. I kind of do, but ultimately we want everything to be in the aisles of a Target. We want it to be really, really strategic. So when I walk down the aisle, I know where I am. If it's photography, if it's copywriting, if it's videography, right? And so when I'm talking to someone, when I'm talking to myself, I know I'm all these things, but these are the core principles or the core verticals that I'm really focused on. And so I want people to understand that. I want people to see that and really be able to dive into it in how they talk about themselves.
I love that. I love that. And for those of you listening, like, you will get so much of Cheldin's wisdom in Scream Your Dream. Like, you have to check out her book. You absolutely have to check it out and check out This Is It Network. Tell us about a few ways that people can work with you. I just know that there's listeners out there that are going, okay, this is all resonating and I need some help. So obviously reading the book is a great way to get
of course,
to Cheldin's wisdom.
It's available on Amazon, so definitely go check that out. Also, there's, again, 2 prongs. We are dedicated to educational entertainment. This Is It Network is our entertainment platform. So if you are ready and have a story to tell, expertise to share, we're always looking for contributors. We're always looking for content. And so be sure to reach out to us. Check us out at thisisItTV.com and all of social platforms at thisisItTV. If you are trying to find your voice, right, and you're trying to be able to organize how you talk about yourself, to yourself, and to others, you can work with me directly. You can have me come into your organization or corporation, or we can work online or in person. There's no limits to the ways in which we can collaborate for sure. And I can be able to directly teach you our Scream Your Dream philosophy and mission. I'd love to be able to do so. It's really simple. I break everything down with a lot of enthusiasm, but everything is really, really organized to make it as easy as possible so you can reach your goals. My goal always is to ensure that you no longer whisper your wishes, but you in fact scream your dream. So that's my hope.
I love that. I love that, Cheldin. And you and I have some plans up our sleeves of ways that we can continue to collaborate together, do some events together, bring our communities together. So I can't thank you enough. Is there any parting wisdom or any last things that you want to share with our audience?
Listen, I just want you to try. I want you to practice, and I want you to post, to share, to talk. Start with one form of communication that will get you closer to what it is that you want. Do not keep your ambition, your skill set, and your expertise a secret. Scream your dream.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a delightful conversation. I'm so excited. I so appreciate you, Cheldin. I can't wait for more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you found this episode helpful, idea-provoking, and inspiring, especially if you're in the midst of creating or clarifying your next chapter. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate you, your vulnerability, your stories of creating a life and meaningful work amidst adversity, grief, ever-changing and challenging times, and of course, life's peaks and uncertain valleys. You are seekers, wisdom sharers, and artists of life, and together we can build meaningful next chapters that feel aligned with who we really are, what we're put on this earth to do, and how we can make a difference one human being at a time. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and I would love it if you could leave a review for the art of what's next. If you know someone who wants to create a new chapter or who would appreciate this episode, please share it with them. You can text it to them or email them the link or post about the show on your Instagram. If you want more help in creating your own meaningful next chapter, join the Hivery newsletter to get inspiration, stories, and resources to help you create your next chapter like an artist. Sign up at thehivery.com/podcast or at the link in the show notes.